Welcome to Free Marketing Fridays. 30 minutes of actionable advice you can start using today because we all need to work smarter, not harder. And these 30 minutes are designed to help you do just that. So I'm not going to give you any fluff. There's no generic advice. There's no hustle bro advice that you can't apply. And I'm not going to pitch you to buy a course or join a paid community. I'm not selling anything. This is just a straight talk about what actually works. So today we are going to be talking about what happens when that perfect fit prospect that you've been really excited about just goes silent on you. You know, the one that's like checked every box, had a high lead score, is an ideal fit, then nothing, just crickets. And it's one thing when it happens once, but when it becomes a pattern and it happens again and again, then it's a problem and you need to start paying attention to that. And look, I get it. There's weird economic pressure, and this weird ass year has just ruffled everybody's feathers and really thrown any type of seasonality out of the window. But it's not the only reason why your prospects are ghosting you. There are very real and trackable reasons why prospects ghost. And once you know what those are, you can actually do something about it. So, and a secret that no one really likes to talk about a lot is they didn't ghost you because your product or solution was too expensive. And I will dig into that a lot more. But they ghosted you because something didn't click for them. Maybe a story fell off. It just kind of didn't resonate with them. Maybe their boss asked a question they couldn't answer. Maybe they got scared. Maybe the choice was just too hard to make right now. And so they just decided to punt and not make any decision at all. But you need to know what happened so that you can go back and fix it and prevent it from happening in the future. So today I'm going to show you how to spot those patterns that tell you what's wrong, fix the gaps, and yes, even bring maybe a few ghosts back from the dead. So let's get to it. In the next 30 minutes, we will be talking about why your deals actually die. And spoiler alert, again, it's not why or where you think it is. And then we'll talk about why price is never the real objection that causes prospects to ghost and just abandon their purchase decision. Even when they say, your stuff's too expensive, that's not really what's going on there. And then I'm going to walk you through a tool that I use with my own clients so that you can spot and map exactly where your last 5 deals went cold. And then I'm going to give you the argument you need to help sell, fixing any gaps you discover to an already overworked and completely stressed out team. We haven't met before. My name's Sunny Hunt. I'm the Chief Customer Nerd here at Hunt Interaction. We help companies grow customer bases using smarter and more efficient ways, starting with their most profitable customers and reverse engineering them. My work typically lives at the intersection of customer research, strategic customer growth, and revenue acceleration. I've worked with all of these companies and a ton more, and across 15 different industries. And surprisingly enough, solving customer growth challenges is pretty similar from company to company and industry to industry. It's just the specifics of actually fixing those challenges that tends to vary a little bit. So ghosting doesn't happen because your prospects don't care. It happens because they got stuck. Sometimes they never got the information they needed, or they got it too late in their decision process for it to matter. Sometimes you might have delivered it in the wrong format or in the wrong channel. So for instance, maybe you launched a killer LinkedIn campaign, but they spend their time on Instagram. You think that they ignored you, but in reality, they just never saw what you had to say. And sometimes you make it too hard to say yes. It's too much effort. There's too much risk. There's not enough clarity, and you haven't included enough de-risking for them to make it easy to say yes. And sometimes you just assumed that they knew something about your solution when in reality, they didn't know that at all. And no one ever stopped to confirm what they knew or what they didn't know. Each point where prospects ghost is predictable, which also means it's preventable, but only if you know where to look. And I'm going to tell you where. So let's talk about what actually kills deals. Again, it's not price. I've watched companies blame price over and over and over again when the real problem sits in the corner, kind of lurking in a little blind spot. So we'll get to price in a second, but let's talk about the real reasons why your prospects are ghosting you. And these are the key things that you are competing against. You are competing against the cost of doing nothing. If staying with their existing solution looks cheaper or easier than changing to your solution, odds are good they're going to stick with what they know and what they're currently doing every single time. The switching costs are just too high, and you haven't made the argument in order to lower those switching costs. There's also competing priorities, and you might be competing with other vendors, but more importantly, you're competing with every other initiative fighting for budget, for time, for resources, and attention inside that company. And you may not know what those are until you get closer to the sale and can start having those one-on-one conversations. And right now, there are about 13 stakeholders in every B2B deal. Like, that is a ridiculous number of stakeholders. And it just gets bigger and bigger every single year. And honestly, this number is according to Edelman for 2025. I really am worried about what 2026 was actually going to look like. But, we'll get there when we get there. But this is a lot of people with a lot of opinions. And if you don't know who shows up and what their good pushback is going to be from each one of these members in this buying committee, you're already dead in the water. And also your champion. This is the person who's running around to all the different competitors, getting all this information and making the argument internally with the buying committee. That's your champion, right? You need to know if they can actually sell this or sell your solution internally. Or are you asking them to move a mountain using just a teaspoon, right? Is that a Herculean task for them? You need to know how engaged they are, what their role is in the buying committee, and what their influence is. You may also need to know how much education they need before they can advocate for you in that committee. So are you going to have to do a lot of education, or are they already pretty self-aware of what's going on and have a pretty solid foundation? And here's the one that everybody forgets. You need to know what the steps are to get a signature under contract. If you're working with 3 layers of approval and 2 rounds of compliance, instead of like a startup CEO who you're just working one-on-one with directly, like, those are very different deals and very different pitfalls and opportunities for prospects to just ghost you during that purchase process. So you need to know what that process looks like. And one thing to keep in mind is that you're talking to a human. A tired, stressed out human who's been pitch slapped on LinkedIn like 17 times this week, like they are just done. Sometimes the deal dies, and sometimes people ghost you because they just can't deal with one more vendor treating them like a number. Something to keep in mind. And I mentioned earlier that price is never the objection, and like 99% of the time, like, I mean it. Price is typically an excuse or an easy way for your prospects to say, like, I don't see how we're going to get value out of this thing for the price that you're willing or that you're asking me to pay. Like, I need to know, or I'm uncomfortable with buying into the promise that it's going to do this magic stuff for this amount of money. Like, I haven't seen the proof there yet. So when you hear this from prospects, you need to dig a little bit deeper. And even if you're doing like a customer survey and they say price was an objection, you need to be prepared to ask follow-ups and build that into your survey logic. So let me give you some examples. In a customer survey, when asked, what would have stopped you from buying? The majority of customers for this client of mine said price. Like, price would have stopped me from buying. But if you take this at face value, you automatically start thinking like, oh my gosh, we need to start discounting programs and sales and ways to make our product cheaper and more affordable. That's a logical thing or a logical reaction when you see that. But if you dig a little deeper and ask, why did you buy from us and not our competitors? Customers say things like, the sales process was comfortable, the pricing was fair, and the company has a good reputation. And when you translate that, customers weren't saying that the prices were too high. They were saying that they were afraid of getting ripped off, that they didn't know what they didn't know, but they had a great experience with the sales process that made them comfortable, and it made it easy to say yes. So a different example from a B2B SaaS company, and I pulled these from like a different customer survey. One customer talks about the product offered better flexibility for an affordable price. And like another customer talks about a consolidated feature set with the volume of integrations and price as an afterthought. And another starts by introducing price, but then quickly shifts to simplicity, ease of use, the number of seats, flexibility. And these are just 3 quote examples from like dozens of survey responses that mentioned price, but they were all couched in price for the value that they got from the product. So it's never just price. There's always something else there, and it needs to be weighed into that equation. So now we know what you're competing against, like the cost of inaction, not knowing the signature process, not really kind of taking price as a solid objection, right? Those are the things you're competing against. So back to this pipeline and figuring out exactly how to plug the holes that are causing your prospects to just ghost you. And here's something hopefully that will kind of change how you think about your pipeline. You probably have stages set up in your pipeline, or sorry, in your CRM, like they're qualified, they're demo complete, proposal sent, won, lost, recapture, whatever it is. That's your internal process, but it has nothing to do with where your prospect is in their buying journey. I use the phases of customer awareness. To be totally clear, I did not develop this, but I'm using it and modifying it for this particular purpose, because these phases of awareness represent your actual pipeline, not what HubSpot or Salesforce is telling you is your pipeline, but where your prospects are mentally and emotionally while they're making a decision. So this isn't about your sales stages. It's about centering your prospect's journey. So your prospects move through 6 stages: unaware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware, most aware, and finally, most aware with high intent. It's right after this most aware with high intent that they make a purchase. They say yes. Your prospects never skip any of these stages ever. Some will move very fast through some of them. Some will crawl through this process, but they hit every single one of these phases while they're making their decision. So if you want to fix holes in your pipeline so you can stop people from ghosting and stalling out your deals, start by building empathy for where your prospects actually are. Because if they stumble along this path at any point, it means that your team isn't supporting them with what they need to move to the next stage. And that's a prospect that's just waiting to turn into a ghost. So taking these stages and applying a messaging and a channel map over the top of it will show you what message belongs where and when to deliver it in which channel, so you stop overwhelming your early stage problem aware people with super detailed features about your product, or boring your most aware with high intent customers with education that they already have, because it's not helping them move forward through the process, and it is eroding your credibility. So I'm going to walk you through more details on this in just a minute, but first I need to step on my soapbox and make a point for a minute. When you see good fit prospects ghosting, it's natural to want to panic and freak out, especially when it continues to happen or you start seeing a pattern emerge. Revenue targets aren't suggestions. Your board doesn't want to hear excuses. So your teams start grasping at anything, any quick fix, any duct tape solution to prop up your pipeline. And that's why things like discounting and overselling future features and making big grand promises that don't reflect reality feel like easy ways to solve this problem. But here's the thing about sacrificing long-term value for short-term gains. You're going to be right back here where you are right now in 3 months, trying to shore up the crumbling foundation of whatever you've cobbled together in desperation. Meanwhile, you're going to be pissing off your loyal customers because they see that new customers got discounts or fun, new, shiny stuff that they didn't get. And if they start leaving or even think about leaving, that's going to compound your problem. So if you want to fix this permanently and bring in customers who boost your overall customer lifetime value, you need real decision-making criteria from your actual customers. And this isn't what ChatGPT thinks they care about. And it's not what worked 5 years ago, because your customers are very different now. This is decision-making criteria that your current best fit customers used when making a purchase decision, and then applying it to attract, convert, and keep those prospects in your pipeline right now. One other thing. I know I said price is never the objection, but let me be clear. If you've got enterprise pricing and you're chasing startups, that's not a price objection. That's a focus problem. You have to know your ICP cold. You have to understand who actually gets value from your solution and what that value looks like. Stop wasting time, budget, and emotional energy trying to convince bad fit prospects that they belong in your pipeline. They don't. And every minute you spend on them is a minute you're not spending on the prospects who actually need what you're selling. You can't be everything to everybody. You don't have the budget to even try. You've got to be specific about who you're targeting and why. Okay, I'm going to snap off my soapbox for a second. We're going to go back to this map a little bit. So when you think about like these stages and your prospects moving through them, how do you figure out what prospects at each stage need, right? You can break these phases into 3 smaller groups, which makes it easier to not only like identify where you're at currently in supporting those prospects with like things like content and sales enablement tools and efforts, but where you could be doing more or where you're not doing anything at all. So starting over here on the left, unaware and problem-aware prospects deal primarily with awareness-generating efforts. And honestly, I typically advise my clients to ignore the unaware stage. It's just too much of a lift and it's too expensive to try to convince someone they actually have a problem. It's just, they're bigger opportunities. But this isn't brand awareness that I'm talking about with these 2 stages. It's recognition and awareness of the problem or the struggle that they're trying to solve. So let me give you an example. Say you have a notebook and you use it to keep track of your brilliant ideas and your business planning goals, and then you accidentally leave it in a restaurant after a brainstorming meeting with some friends. And now you are aware that you have a problem because you didn't translate any of your notes to an electronic format. And all of those notes, they're gone. Moving on to solution aware and product aware. These are the early stages of evaluation or evaluating products to solve that particular solution. This is where problem solving starts with category introduction, solution introduction, and evolving into brand recognition. So start mentioning those brand names and not just the category. So back to this like notebook example. Having lost your notebook, you start to look for a solution so that you don't have a single point of failure again when capturing all of your brilliant notes. You know that you like to write, but you don't want to run the risk of losing your notebook again. So you discover a whole category of electronic notepads. And when you dig a little deeper, you start discovering brands like Remarkable, Kindle Scribe, Supernote, all of those really fun things, which is great. That kind of represents the whole evaluation stage. Like, I found a solution, now I'm going to start looking at these things. When you get to most aware and most aware with high intent phases, this is where people are starting the decision-making process, the real core deciding criteria. They need specialized content and support that's geared towards narrowing options, overcoming objections, and making a decision. This is where saying yes easy is really, really important. So if you go back to our notebook example, you might narrow your choices down to like the Remarkable Paper Pro and maybe the Amazon Kindle Scribe, and then ultimately like making a decision between those 2 and solving the problem of losing your notebook in the first place, because it will automatically sync to Google Drive or iCloud or whatever it is. You're never going to lose your notes again. The key here that you need to know is how your customers make decisions and what's important to them so that you can create content and support mechanisms to move them through these phases and understand how you stand apart from your competition, especially when you want to move those deals forward and actually close them. So back to the phases of customer awareness and what like a fleshed out map looked like. I alluded to the fact that you could apply messages and channels and timing to a map like this. This is a customer awareness map. It's an asset I produce in my customer growth sprints. I take the decision-making criteria for my clients' best fit customers, reverse engineer it, align it to their business goals, and then add it to this map. It's basically a messaging and pipeline Rosetta Stone that anyone on the team can use when they need to develop things like a campaign, email, create a white paper, develop a demo, create a webinar, whatever it is. But essentially, it's a cheat sheet that connects the phases of awareness to the messages that prospects need to hear along their journey, and then what you're going to do to support those messages on that path to saying yes. It even identifies the KPIs at every stage that when you measure those over time, they act as an early warning system to tell you there's something wrong in the pipeline, that there's a gap or something has changed in your prospects, or there's a new competitor that's kind of stealing your thunder. Like, those are things, and they throw red flags early so that you can address them before they become a real problem. But when you're looking for ways to solve a ghosting problem in this particular pipeline, or looking for those places where people are dropping off, those KPIs are a really great place to use. And this is a really great place to kind of show a visualization of where in that journey they are dropping off. And I will kind of give you a much more detailed version of this. This centers your customers because it outlines the messages and the channels they need to hear. and even how to measure that effectiveness. So this is a really amazing tool. So let's talk about a realistic place to start if you wanted to build a map that's similar to this for yourself. Before you start dropping current pipeline activities into a chart like this customer awareness map, you need two things, and no, they're not like a Ouija board or an old priest and a young priest. But the two biggest things that you can bring to this exercise are clarity and focus. You need to know, again, exactly who you're talking to and the decision-making criteria they use. I can't stress this enough. If you don't have this information, this entire exercise is going to be more opinions and more assumptions. You need that data in order to inform what messages they need. And if you don't know what they're looking for, you really need to get it. This is that foundation that everything else is based off of. So anyway, once you have this customer data and understand exactly how they make decisions and these insights, here are 3 practical things that you can just plug in and start on Monday. Number 1, go and pull your last 5 ghosted deals. I recommend pulling deals that were closer to the closing stage or had a lot of activity, but for some reason they just kind of went silent. Those are going to be really juicy deals to kind of dig into. Make sure that they are a good fit prospect. Don't just lean on your lead scores. Verify, trust but verify, right? Map specifically where each one's stalled on the customer awareness map and what you're doing in order to support them at that particular stage. Odds are good they're going to find a pattern because humans are predictable. We tend to follow patterns. History is a great example of that, right? Then you create or identify one thing for that exact stage. Not 10 things, not a whole campaign, one asset that could re-engage them and gets the conversation started again. Maybe support they need is like a day in the life story that makes their pain really specific. Or maybe it's a case study from someone or a different company that looks exactly like them in the same industry with the same growth trajectory. Find something in common. Maybe it's a simple comparison chart that shows how what your product does maps to what they value most or their desired outcome that a champion can then take and bring back to the committee and look like a hero. But only do one thing, targeted precisely where the deals are going silent, and then make sure they have the opportunity to see it, whether that's through personal outreach, you literally call them on the phone, send a personalized email, you send out a broader email campaign, or a targeted ad spend in channels where you know they're spending time, whatever that is that's going to get in front of your prospect, specifically your champion. And honestly, if you reach out and they reply back and they're like, hey, no, we went with a competitor. Okay, great. That deal's dead. It's better to know now than to continue to waste time pursuing them or tearing your hair out because you have no idea why they went silent in the first place. So let me give you examples of what you should look for if you're looking at this customer awareness map. If you've identified with your 5 deals that you're getting ghosted at the finish line, like you've sent out a proposal and then you get crickets back, that sucks. This is the most aware with high intent phase. Odds are good. 1 of 3 things have happened. Number 1, they decided not to make a decision. They're just sticking with what they have. They've tabled the decision. They're just not moving forward. The second thing is they went with a competitor. Oops. And the third thing is they are stuck arguing internally because you haven't done a good job overcoming their objections in a proactive way. So they're arguing about what ifs internally. So understanding what their objections to purchase are and then helping them overcome those with information, case studies, with reference calls, with one-on-one conversations. The biggest question you need to ask yourself is, what can you do to lower the risk of saying yes? If you see a group of prospects that you can't move to most aware with high intent, they're just kind of stuck here, kind of like they've narrowed it down to 3 or 4 options and like they're done, they're just kind of stuck. Here are a couple things to look at. If you have demos or pitches, are those aligned with what your customers want the most? And are they specialized for each prospect, or do you just shove them into the same boilerplate demo or pitch that everybody else gets? Do you have industry-specific use cases or applications that are specific to them? Or are you just showing them that you know everything that there is to know about this one particular product that applies to everybody, and it's not very specific at all? And are they price aligned? And I need to, again, stand up on my soapbox for another second and call out B2B SaaS companies. You know who I'm talking about. If you can't set basic expectations around pricing so your prospects know that they could be a customer, you shouldn't be counting any lead that hits this most aware phase as qualified. I'm just going to call it out right now, right? They need to understand whether or not you are priced like a Ferrari or whether or not you're priced like a Honda Civic, because everybody has budgets. Even if your pricing is more complicated to calculate than my taxes, you should still be able to set rough expectations about whether a prospect can afford your product or not. And this argument, it's not a pricing objection. It's basic education and qualification for your prospects. So now I'm going to step off my soapbox and kind of like, we'll continue the conversation. So if you are seeing a lot of drop off at the product aware stage, you need to help your prospects see themselves using your product and delivering on their desired outcome, whatever that is. Our life is better now that we're using this product in these specific ways. They need to be able to see that and to visualize that and believe it. How your product is aligned to that vision than any of your other competitors is really, really important, because the product aware stage introduces name and product comparisons. People are shopping your competition at this stage. And remember, it's not just about features that your dev team can build in the next sprint. That's not a differentiator anymore. It's what they value most. So identifying and kind of figuring out where your gaps are, it's not magic. It's a process. There's not a lot of mystery here. It just takes a little thought, a little bit of effort. It's about knowing your best fit customers and deconstructing what messages they need to hear and what you're doing in order to deliver those messages in order to support their purchase decision. So now you know roughly how to map out where your deals are dying off and start identifying patterns, but not every ghosted deal is gone forever. So here's what to do to bring back some of those ghosted deals to life. First thing is to make sure they didn't buy from the competition, because that's awkward. But here's how you do this. Number one, identify where they dropped off. What is that stage and what kind of message do they need to hear to kind of move them to the next stage? The second thing is you can reach out one-on-one with something of value. This is not sales pressure. You're not asking them to buy anything. You're asking how you can help. Offer something useful that fills that gap that made them pause. A resource, a connection, a conversation, something that makes their next step easier. And you're not chasing, you're helping. Because we've all gotten this pitch and this pitch and this pitch, and we've all deleted, blocked, and disconnected from the people who sent them. People remember how you made them feel. Make sure that you're treating them like humans and not like numbers. So once you've identified the gaps that need to be filled to bring those deals back to life and prevent future ghosting, how do you sell filling those gaps to a team that's already overworked and like stressed out to the max? Here's how I recommend selling it. Number one, show the gaps in your messaging and support. Use that map that I showed you and visualizing where those gaps are. People absorb visual information a lot better than just telling them that there's a problem. If you can show them, that's a lot better than just giving them an explanation. Identify a place where people are ghosting you. If you identify a place where people are ghosting you because there's too much hard selling, gently call out where you're being too aggressive with an opportunity to soften the approach and maybe reduce the churn in the process. And when I say being too aggressive, it's like assuming someone is willing to marry you right after the first coffee date and all up in their face and they're like, bye, 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 bye. And it's a real turn off and people just check out. And if you are able to frame filling those gaps as low effort, big reward that leads to fewer ghosted deals, faster closes, and less second guessing, odds are good you're going to have an easier time getting buy-in, especially from the team members who would otherwise be tasked with doing a big old fat list of everything else. If they can do one or two things better instead, it's going to be a lot easier to get buy-in from them. And it may be tempting to want to pay an Etsy witch for a spell to magically fix all of your pipeline issues. And honestly, like, it could be a fun experiment. I'm not going to lie about that. But there are better, more repeatable ways to fix your success gaps in your pipeline. So after 30 minutes, here's what I want you to leave with. Ghosting's not random. It's totally predictable. It follows patterns you can spot. Price is never the real objection. It's always about value and whether or not you're going to deliver on your promises. Address those 5 real things that kill your deals and proactively address them whenever you can. And those are like the cost of action or not choosing anything, competing priorities, stakeholders and their pushback, how strong your champions are, and the steps to signature. Those are your deal killers. And you can fix ghosting fast by mapping your last 5 deals to that customer awareness map, spotting the common issue, and building a single asset that helps move those prospects forward. And yes, you can resurrect some good fit ghosts with low effort, high value personal touch. And finally, if you want to sell this internally, the way to do it is your team needs to hear that there are fewer ghosted deals, faster closes, less wasted effort. And that's not a sales trick. It's your customer intelligence working for you instead of against you. That's how you stop your ghosting for good. So my final parting thought is that your ghosting isn't about prospects disappearing. It's about us not giving them what they need to make saying yes easier. So fix that. You won't just save your deals. You're going to save your team from second guessing every decision, and you're going to make your life a lot easier in the process. So that's all the time we have today for Free Marketing Fridays. And I have a quick favor to ask. If you're watching this on the replay and you found this valuable, if you could give me a thumbs up, really appreciate it. And if you really found it valuable, you can share it with someone who could use the support. I would be eternally grateful. So thanks for spending time with me, and I will see you next time on Free Marketing Fridays.